Go ahead and get started. My name's Kayla, and I'm the head of adult programming and outreach at New Canaan Library. And it has been my pleasure to organize the story of startups with Laura Budd, who's here tonight from the New Canaan Chamber of Commerce. This is a 4-week-long series. We're kicking off tonight. This is our first session on starting a business 101. We have a session next week. We have a break week after that where we're actually going to be taking some feedback from you all to see what you're interested in and how we can best kind of cater the series to you. And then we're going to go ahead with 2 last sessions on February 23rd and March 2nd. So if you haven't registered for the remainder of the series, please do so at newcanaanlibrary.org/calendar. And now I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Kayla. Welcome, everybody. On behalf of the New Canaan Chamber of Commerce, we're really pleased you're joining us here tonight. And we are very lucky tonight to have Christine Sullivan, who is a consultant with the Connecticut Small Business Association and works with UCONN's business department. After a 15-year career in investment banking, managing all sorts of areas, specifically tech and food, as well as funding and debt management, et cetera. Christine has devoted this part of her career to helping entrepreneurs, making their dreams into reality, giving them the basic tools that they need, helping them find funding, and really working through the process. So she has a wealth of knowledge, and we're really lucky to have her throughout this series. And we hope you'll join us, as Kayla said, for the other sessions. And also, after week 2, you're going to get a survey, and we really encourage you to take that survey. We want to learn more about you, so we can help tailor some of the last 2 sessions. So with that in mind, welcome. I hope that this is the first step for many of you on a journey, and one day you'll be one of our members. That would be fabulous. So thank you, and Christine, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Kayla. And thank you, everybody who's taking time out of their evenings to join us tonight. When we started planning for this event, it was a really long time ago, and I completely envisioned it as an in-person event. And with this weather, though, I was thinking this is absolutely perfect for a night to spend talking about starting your own business. So what we're going to talk about today, let me just figure out how to get to the next screen, we're going to try and cover in the next hour all the information you need to help you launch a successful small business. I've got it broken down into 4 topics: assessing your own personal readiness for this venture, evaluating your idea, creating a business plan, and reviewing a startup checklist at the end. So assessing your personal readiness, this is the kind of thing that people often skip, but I think it's a really important start. A lot of people think I want to start my own business because I want to get rich quick and be my own boss. And, at the same time, we realize that most small businesses that start fail. So we want to make sure that we've thought these things through very concretely, both from the personal side and the business side. One of the things that we come into contact with a lot is there are people who are really great and super passionate about their business idea, but if they're not entrepreneurial and they don't have like a strong business sense, that's where we can run into trouble. And we see all the time, there are doctors who are expert in their field who still need to either hire a partner with business background or take business classes. And the same thing with like wonderful chefs and different kind of entrepreneurs who love what they're doing, but do need to consider adding business expertise to their team. So this is really like a 3-tiered group of questions to think about. And, there are a lot of questions here, but just generally in the column on the left, generally, why do you want to start this business? And would people describe you as entrepreneurial? That's important to know. Do you have a background in the business that you're planning to start? Have you ever taken a course? And then importantly, do you have people to support you in this? Do you have skill sets that complement yours that are going to help you be successful? And do you have a family that is going to be supporting you in this endeavor? Then you go to the middle column talking about your business idea. Specifically, what kind of business are you looking to start and what problem is it solving? Why do you believe that this is the right time for this business and that it'll be sustainable today? And we spend a lot of time with our clients talking about exactly that. I worked in technology, as Laura said, and in my prior life, I was on the original IPO team for eBay. And I still remember sitting around a table and writing up the documents about eBay and thinking, wow, nobody's really going to buy a Pez dispenser from somebody that they don't know and have to pay remotely. And boy, was I wrong. They hit that at exactly the right time, obviously. So then going to the last column here, thinking really realistically and honestly about the financial goals you're trying to achieve when starting your business. And as most people know, but not all the entrepreneurs I work with, there's generally a time period between when they start and when they're actually cash flow positive. So can you afford that? Is a very important question to answer. So when you get started, there are a couple different ways to think about things. You can start a business from scratch, your own idea, where everything you do, from incorporating to creating a name to a website, you do for the very first time. The second idea here on the page is buying an existing business. So that's a different process where you're going to have to come up with a value and a purchase relationship with the seller. And then all the way on the right is purchasing a franchise, where you're still purchasing a business that you'll introduce to your market, but that you will, you'll have a blueprint pretty much given to you. And each of these options are available and have different pros and cons to them. And different of them may be better depending on the person and personality and skill set that you bring to the table. If you're more of an operations person and good at executing a plan, but not super creative, then purchasing a franchise may make more sense, or purchasing an existing business. But if really you've got these ideas in your head that you want to bring to market that are really novel and new, then maybe you're on the left-hand part of the screen here with starting a new business. So a question that I get asked often is, do I need a business plan? And going back to the days where we were working with companies like eBay and Amazon, there's the famous story of Jeff Bezos driving cross country with his wife, and she drove so that he could actually write his business plan. And that, we kind of call entrepreneurship circa 1980. It's where the entrepreneur sits down, sits in a room on his computer, writes out a very lengthy plan that has, everything that you could possibly need to know about your market opportunity and what the financials are going to look like. Then you bring it to try and raise capital and convince other people that this is a good idea, that's a really good plan, and then you launch the business. And while there are many examples of success, the statistic is 75% of startups typically fail. So what we've learned, in the past couple decades of seeing startups succeed and fail and boom and bust, is that customers matter a lot. And that's generally one piece of the puzzle that was left out in these early business plans. So that element of customer feedback that can help you figure out whether the idea you have is right for the moment we're in. And so that's the kind of idea that I'm hoping to share, is that until you've tested your idea on real live customers, you really don't have that final piece of the puzzle. So part of the goal, once you've sketched out what your plan looks like, is getting that market feedback. Another important thing that I think we've realized since those early days of startups is that startups are not smaller versions of large companies. There are often people who have built a career working at a very large company who decide to go out on their own, not realizing that you don't start a small business with a travel department and a separate CFO and a separate COO. Small businesses are lean, and some people thrive in that kind of environment where you roll up your sleeves and everybody's willing to do something, but not everybody is made for that. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to sketch out the idea. And I'm going to walk you through this slide, and then the next slide is a tool that we use with a lot of our clients when we talk about ideation. You know, if somebody, if an entrepreneur wants to sort of sketch out the broad bones, parts of an idea, and whether whether the idea has legs. Thing that we go through a lot with our clients. Is this a modification or an upgrade of something that's already in the market? Or is it something completely new that you're going to have to evangelize to get people to understand what it is? You know, there's, I have a client who had a coffee product that he kind of stumbled into the recipe, and it tasted fabulous. And when he would make it at farmers markets, people loved it. But the challenge was when it sat on the shelf, people weren't quite sure what to do about it, because he really needed to evangelize and make sure that his product stood alone and told its own story. Then the last bullet point, which is really important, is pricing. And this is super crucial to think about, because especially in this time where there are a lot of online businesses and apps that are ostensibly free, and the company is hoping to make money off of you in other ways. So it's important to sort of test each of these things with real customers and feedback. Now, this is a tool that I really like, and I hope that you can see all the words that are in this in this little, it looks like a placemat, and when we print it out, that's a lot of how we use it. But it's called the Business Model Canvas. So it's a tool that we use in ideation. We do some ideation type workshops where people can bring their ideas and try and sketch out what the business plan would look like. So this is sort of your very first idea, when all the thoughts are sort of bubbling around in your head. I like this to get some of them on paper and really illustrate all the key aspects of a business model that you need that turns your idea into a plan. And I'm just going to go and talk through these vaguely in a left to right category. But if you can answer all these questions, I think you have a very good start to be developing your business plan. So starting from the left top, key partners. So any business relies on partners to be successful. And that can be, if you're a bakery, you have your ingredients and your supply chain, and then you have your distribution plan. How do you get to the customers? Are you going to be selling things on Amazon or door to door or anything in between? The next column, key activities and key resources. So what exactly is your business doing? Key activities and the key resources, and what inputs to that do you need? Is it capital? Is it ingredients? Is it space? You know, what are the things that you really are going to rely on to make it happen in real life? The long column in the middle, value propositions. This goes to why your product, why now, and why at this price. And you can look at this in terms of what the competitive environment looks like. You know, how do we compare from a price perspective, a value perspective? You know, why are their customers going to buy this? Next, your customer relationships. So you want to talk about how you're going to be reaching your customers, whether these are one-time sales or recurring revenue model. You want to think about those things. Then below that is the channels and how you find your customers. You know, is this the kind of thing where it's a one-to-one sale? Is it, you know, for a lot of online businesses, you can do some digital marketing, and we talk about a marketing funnel where you're just trying to get people to click through and learn about you and then eventually sign up as a customer. But thinking through how are you going to acquire your customers? What channels are you going to use there? Then looking all the way on the right is the idea of what customer segments you're going to be trying to attract. I can't tell you how many clients I have that I see who, when we talk about their customer segments, they say, well, the whole world is a customer. And that may well be true. You know, everybody wants to buy a gluten-free cupcake, but who are going to buy the most quickly, who care the least about how much it costs, that's where you want to spend your marketing dollars first. So looking across the bottom, we look at your cost structure. So what do you need to have working to be able to sell the very first customer that you have? Do you need an office? Do you need a manufacturing facility? If you're going to be making cupcakes, can you use somebody else's kitchen to get started before you feel like you need to make a major investment? And then last on the right, your revenue streams. Again, how are people paying for your product? Are these, you know, is this a membership? Is it one-time cost? And, you know, we sort of talk about this as your business model or your revenue model. So I hope that you like this sort of rubric for a thought process around turning an idea into a plan. This is something that I would be happy to send out via email if anybody wants to get working on it. Whoops. So next I want to talk about the idea of a lean startup. And this is an idea, there's a really great book by Gary Reese about it. And it's really an evolution of the startup back from the days where Jeff Bezos drove across country writing a business plan. The idea behind this is how lean an idea can we put into the market so that we get the customer feedback that we want to be able to launch our business. Now, I can put this in really simple terms or more complicated, but to start with a simple example that I saw happen quite a bit over the course of the past year with COVID, people are cooking a lot. And I'm sure everybody on this call has had more sourdough bread in the last year than they have had in their lives. And inevitably, there were people sitting at home making their sourdough bread, convinced that it was the best anybody was going to find in the market, and decided to start businesses based on that feedback. But just because your family likes your sourdough bread doesn't really make a business. So what we would see, and what I saw in several cases with new clients, is they started cooking out of their kitchen, which you can do in a food business. I mean, there are regulations about that, which is worth a conversation if that's something you're interested in. You can get a cottage food license to cook certain things in your very own kitchen. And as long as you're adhering to the rules, you can sell that as a way of testing the market to see if people on your block and people in your neighborhood also are going to buy your sourdough bread. And then if that works and you've outgrown what you can cook in your own kitchen, maybe that's the time to invest in a commercial kitchen share or something like that. But the idea here can also be used, and is quite often used, and if you think about it, you'll see examples in your own life about apps that may be launched, which have a very basic concept. And it's the company doesn't want to build their whole vision. They want to build just enough to make sure that they're right and developing it in the right direction. So it's a build, measure, learn, iterative circle that I've tried to illustrate on this slide. You're going to build the leanest, simplest version of what you're trying to do. You're going to put it into the market with what we call the minimum viable product. It's the minimum viable product that you can use to get market feedback from actual customers. You build it, you put it into the market, get some feedback, measure the feedback because we're all about data, and then take what you've learned, rebuild, reassess, relaunch. And you iterate on this until you have the final product that you're looking for. So the benefits to thinking like this is that it's just so much cheaper. And I think we're going to do in week 4, have a longer, more detailed conversation about raising equity capital or debt capital to fund your business. But that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And it is just not that easy to raise the tens of millions of dollars that you may need to launch a new business. So the idea has gone from raising everything and then taking that big risk to raising as little as possible. And there are a couple of great examples in the world of people who've launched this way. One of the most famous lean thinking examples is Zappos, the online shoe store that launched not long after Amazon, I think, but the team that launched Zappos, their thesis was that people were going to buy shoes online. And they'd make it super easy. You could buy multiple sizes and pairs, and they'd pay for free shipping and returns. But they weren't totally sure. So when they launched their website, they had a bare bones website with a lot of pictures of shoes that they took from local stores, and they posted them online. And if somebody actually bought a pair of shoes, they were thrilled, but they had to go actually buy those shoes to sell to the customer. So they basically made no money with their first shoe sales, but they did prove the concept that people would buy shoes online. And that was enough to get them to raise the capital they needed for the inventory that eventually resulted in $1 billion sale of their business to Amazon. Another thing, Dropbox, which everybody uses like crazy, was not at all. They didn't invest $1 in their technology when they launched. They created a 3-minute video that they put out there and wanted to see if there would be any interest. And of course, like we know what's happened to that. So when we think about the minimum viable business plan, because we want to make sure that you're not spending undue time and effort in creating a plan when you could really be repurposing that time and effort getting your business into the market. So here's a set of questions that I think even the leanest business plan needs to answer. And this is more, I think of it as really an organized text version of the business model canvas that we took as a first step. So looking into your mission and vision, why are you starting this business, and what's your long-term vision for what this could be? What do you see in the market that nobody else does? And what's the unique angle that your company is going to bring to this product or service? A really important thing to articulate is the second one, the problem statement. What problem are you solving? A lot of times, people get inspired to solve a problem that they have, but it's very difficult to understand if the world shares that problem. So it's important to do some market research into whether this is a very small niche market or this is something that people universally care about. So that's the third point, is market size. How big is the addressable market of potential clients that you could have? And there are some great niche type businesses that do quite well, but generally you want to see the market size be broad and unaddressed, ideally, or that you're going to be able to offer something really unique into that addressable market that will make them choose you. It's really important to understand your competitive landscape. So who else is doing something similar? Or who else looks like they're doing something similar but isn't doing a very good job of it? And this comes up, this has to be in every single business plan. I have new restaurants that are opening, and we just sit down with Google Maps. And so if you want to give me an address of where you're trying to open an Italian restaurant, I'm going to take that address, put it into Google, and look for the Italian restaurants within a 3 to 5 to 10 mile radius, just so that we know who's doing something similar and how do we fit into that. It's also really important to think about, take a step away from maybe restaurants, but who's doing something similar and how much are they charging for it? Because that's really critical too. The financial piece we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's very interesting. It's an interesting analysis and always adds something to the plan to think about who's offering something at competitive pricing. Can I undercut them? Is that the strategy that I want? So then we provide a description of your products and services. That should be the easy part. What are we charging? Who are we targeting? The business model, where we talk about our revenue model. Is it one-time, recurring, subscription? Then our marketing strategy, or sometimes we call that customer acquisition strategy. How will we market or sell to our products? And how are you going to reach your customers? And then finally, the financial piece. And often this is something that that entrepreneurs are afraid of. You know, personally, the finances of the business are the lens that I learn the most from my career in banking, and that's something that I do quite often as an advisor. But it's very important to know, when do you break even? You know, how many of whatever my items are do I need to make to pay the rent? You know, there's some simple analyses to be done that I think are critical. This is just a different graphic that will pull together some of the things that we discussed earlier in terms of all the different pieces that are relevant that together comprise your business model. So here is, once you've got your business plan complete, what we call a startup checklist. And this is, again, if anybody's interested, I can certainly email it as follow-up. Starting on the top left, the organization I work for, this is our little 2-minute commercial, but we are the Connecticut Small Business Development Center, and we are funded jointly through the federal government, SBA, Small Business Administration, as well as funded through the state of Connecticut, and we are housed at University of Connecticut. So they pay my salary, and I work free for companies who need growth help. And I work with a team of really awesome advisors throughout the state of Connecticut. There are about 20 of us. And we do everything from helping people with market research, helping refine business plans, helping with access to capital. And as Laura well knows, in the past year, help specifically with access to COVID-related funding. So to the extent that any of that's on your mind, again, we are free. We help, you know, as you need. So here, going through this checklist, and I'll do this pretty quickly, but this is a nice checklist to make sure that you're remembering everything. The selecting your business name, making sure that the entity you choose is not already in the system. So selecting your business name, deciding what legal entity you'll need. This is something that we have some good information on too, whether you're going to be a sole proprietor or an LLC or C Corp. You know, that's a legal designation that there are different decisions depending on the kind of business that you're in. Applying for an EIN, that's basically your employment, your tax information. Apply for a Connecticut tax registration number. Then do you need any specific licenses or permits? That's definitely relevant for anything in the food type of, you know, food or beverage, different licenses or permits that you'll need. Depending on, now I'm going to the second column, if you're hiring employees, you may need to register with the Department of Labor. That's important. There's some new regulations there. There's an issue about zoning that is definitely worth checking into, depending on the kind of business you are and the kind of geography where you're working. Is generally something you can figure out by calling the town you're in, asking them. They're used to those kinds of questions. Next is considering patents or trademark, if you think that that's going to be important for your business going forward. And then some of the fun parts about branding and business image that can be done. And it's amazing through my career how I've seen people spend so much money on their branding and their logo, to today, where you can go onto Fiverr or Freelancer and post an idea, and $100 later, you have all these different logos to choose from, which is really great. And then when you get close to launching, you may need business insurance. So that's something else to consider. Now, there are a lot of different elements to, wow, to consider with regard to financing your business. And as I said, this is going to be something that we talk about in the 4th week because it is a very big topic. But I didn't want it to go unremarked on, because the access to capital is a critical part of starting your small business. And being able to create sort of a projection and looking at the cost structure of your business, nobody really should be starting a business without having done this. And to continue my own personal commercial, this is something that we have some really wonderful tools on. But let me just go through. Assessing the amount of capital you'll need to start your business is important. It's also critical to understand the cost of operating your business until you're cash flow positive. So make sure that you or somebody you know and can help you figure this out. In terms of getting the funding you need, there's a lot of things available in terms of borrowing money in the form of a loan or possibly getting investors into your business. In general, the 3rd bullet point is super important. Like, consider ways to bootstrap your business until you've proven all the things that we spoke about earlier. And some takeaways that I hope you'll take with you: preparation is key. We've provided some tools in here in terms of going from your ideation phase to sort of sketching things out to answering some questions in a plan. They're also, we're going to be starting a business planning class that's open to the public. There's a company called LivePlan that has a business planning online tool where they have completely done business plan templates for every business that I've ever actually seen. So there's some great tools there. Under the category of you have options, there are a lot of different ways to become a business owner. There are a lot of different ways to assess everything needed to decide whether you're ready and whether it's a good idea. Understanding the market does matter. So before investing time and money, it's really critical to understand the things that we've spoken about a little earlier. The numbers have to work. It's just a fact. A little quote from my dad: failure to plan is planning to fail. So the more planning you do, the happier you'll be with a lens of looking to do this the leanest way possible. And then finally, compliance. So making sure that you're checking the boxes of what needs to be done to be a small business in Connecticut and any permits that may be needed. So again, how we can help, like we do a lot with startups. We have a lot of market research. As I said, my team is housed at UCONN. So, if you're trying to open a restaurant and you have an address, like we have great demographic tools where we can walk through what the population is in that area in a 3-mile radius, 5-mile radius. Is it up, down? How do we look at this? We can also help with importing and exporting, loan structuring, the whole bevy of things. So this is how to find us, and this is my email, and I want to thank you for hanging in there. I think this is about 35 minutes, but we'll open it up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Christine. We have 60 people live with us right now. If you want to go ahead and stop your screen share, I think you and I will look bigger and we can move into that panel type Q&A. But like Christine just said, if everyone wants to just streamline their questions into the Q&A feature, there's a Q&A button built into Zoom, so we can see your questions nice and clearly versus the chat. So what's on everyone's mind?
And I just posted a link also to the chat feature, and it's basically, I know that you signed up with the library, but if you could click on that and sign up with our site, that will be a way for me to send out slides to you directly.
Great, perfect. So any questions? Here's one, I believe. Where do we determine if a business name is available in the state of Connecticut?
So the Secretary of State has a website that's called Concord. So if you Google, I think it's Secretary of State, Connecticut, Concord. I can try and find it and post it there too. But it's
Okay.
basically a lookup feature. So you can check it right there. There's this.
Perfect, thanks. Another person asked, can you provide resources for persons who live and want to open a business in New York State? Or is that out of your realm?
It's out of our realm, but I can certainly refer you. Every state has a version of our organization. So in New York State, it's the Empire State Development Company.
Okay.
And they're pretty awesome and can help you along. I think in Connecticut, we're one organization. In New York, there are several, but they do exactly the same function, and they can help you with that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Christine? Yep, here's another. Will you be talking about how and where to have inventions manufactured in the coming weeks, I guess?
You know, we certainly can. There is a lot going on within the state of Connecticut. So I will say that there is an entire manufacturing center around Hartford that works with our companies who want to either build a facility or use an existing facility. I don't know that that's going to be a topic of broad enough interest to cover it in one of the sessions we have planned already, but it's absolutely something that we could partner you with an advisor with expertise in that.
Thank you. The next question is, what percentage of businesses in Connecticut are classified as small businesses?
I don't know what percentage it is, but it's basically businesses with under 500 employees.
Wow, so that's a lot of them.
So it is, there are a lot. So I think the percentage is quite large. That's a good question.
So we have another question. Does your organization offer help applying for federal grants for an existing small business?
Absolutely. And we're pretty good at it too. So I don't know what kind of federal grants you're thinking about, but we have some strong expertise with small business research and innovation grants that are, I think they're among the most challenging things to apply for that I've ever seen. So yes, absolutely. Those are things that are much better done with help. Do we assist nonprofits? We do. We prefer nonprofits with revenue models. So if the nonprofit is only, sort of philanthropic based, that's not, we'll help them with COVID related things, but we don't have a whole lot to offer for that. But to the extent that there is a revenue model associated with it, then yes, absolutely.
Here's another one. Are there any pitch competitions for startup businesses in Connecticut that give grants out as prize money?
Yes, there absolutely are. I think, so the organization that I think does a really great job, and it's one of our partners, is CT Next. And we're going to have somebody who is coming to our 4th session to talk about that. But CT Next is basically, my organization works with everything from, the solo entrepreneur all the way to somebody looking for equity funding. All of our equity funding clients end up working with CT Next because they're sort of form that outreach function for businesses that are in high growth mode that would be equity candidates. They have a variety of really great programs to look at from a, if you're looking for seed funding, they have a state of Connecticut angel tax credit, which is really great, and they'll talk about that. And then they have what they call an entrepreneur learner's permit. So if it's within sort of the technology sector, they will Often, if it's your first business, you can get a grant from them to cover all your business foundation or business founding expenses, so your LLC fees and things like that. And then they have a program called the Entrepreneur Innovation Awards, which is a 3 or 4 time a year pitch competition. And it's remote now. It's a super fun event when it's live, and hopefully by the summer it will be live. I think the next one is February 25th, but don't quote me. It's soon. And there's a $10,000 prize given by a panel of judges. There's also a smaller cash prize for the audience favorite. And what I like about it is there is this cash prize, which is great, but there's also the audience is filled with seed investors. So even if you don't win the cash prize, people get funded sort of around it, which is really nice. And there are a lot of other places to practice pitching. Because one of my main jobs as an investment banker,
I think you
with
just froze
investors,
for a second.
like I can't tell you how important it is. So I wouldn't only sign up for, oh, am I back?
Yeah, I hear you now. If you want to just repeat your last thought.
So I wouldn't only focus on the pitch competitions where there's a big cash prize, because first of all, they're very difficult to get into. They're very competitive, but you need to practice more than you think. And I know that for women-owned businesses, there's a co-working space in Darien called Haven, and they do Haven Hatch competitions where there are non-cash prizes, but the prizes are good. And it gets you in this environment where investors are seeing you. So I would really encourage people who are on that path to pitch often and get your name out there.
Awesome. So this next question I think is a good one. Someone said, you mentioned figuring out how long it will take to break even. What would be the optimum time before throwing in the towel?
Oh, that's like an impossible question.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a hard question. So there are 2 parts of it though. So the one is having the tool, like having a spreadsheet that is accurate so that you actually know, you know how the math works is important. And from that, like we can iterate and do some different things to figure out like what it's going to take. And then you need to look at, when you're making a decision about how long to go without throwing in the towel, then I want to know, like, what feedback are you getting from the market? You know, what are we learning? I think in the middle of COVID, so many things have changed. And it makes it difficult to make an assessment of stay or go, because we know that we're in a once in 100-year situation. And then we really need to think about ways to make the decision as smartly as possible, given the fact that we're in this absolutely crazy time. So I don't think there's an easy way to answer the question other than the goal should be to figure out how viable the business is given what we expect to reasonably happen in the course of the next 6 to 12 months. I hope that's helpful.
So
I would say I also did, like I've done a couple, we're going to talk about pivoting in next week.
right.
And we have a really awesome speaker talking about that. But the idea of the pivot, I think one of the most interesting things I've read about that is thinking about not trying to get your business back to where it was before, you know, let's say COVID, but figuring out like, what business would I start today, and trying to tailor my business to this environment, given what we reasonably expect to happen over the next year.
We had 2 somewhat similar questions come in. One was about whether or not you assist dental offices. The other one was about whether or not you help businesses in the medical field with things like compliance and whatnot for solo practitioners.
So definitely anything business related is in our sweet spot.
Okay.
If there are compliance issues, that's something that we can often connect you with somebody else in the state who has stronger expertise there.
Okay, great. Let's see, we have time for a few more questions. Someone asked, are there certain markets that are oversaturated? How do you advise clients to pivot and find unsaturated markets?
Yeah, you come tune in next week when we talk about the pivoting. I'll give you a preview that I think one of the most important things to think about, and I think this goes to any decision making under stress. Like, we don't make great decisions when we're under stress. So how do we protect ourselves from that? Is the concept of creating like a crisis rescue team. And you want as many diverse opinions sitting around a table with you as you can possibly have. It's a scary environment to think about making big decisions in. So what we're recommending, and it's something I'm happy to talk about more, but how many different perspectives, different skill sets can we sit around a table who care about you and your business, so that you can have as honest a conversation about that as possible.
Thanks. Someone wants to know, what are some of the good sources for market research that you'd recommend?
So we have an enormous set of resources. We use something called IBIS. It's an awesome tool. I haven't found a business that I can't find a current report on, and that can be like pretty nichey, but they have, they paint this very full picture of the industry. And if we think back to one of the pages in the presentation where I talk about the business model canvas, everything that impacts your business you want to put on a page. Well, IBIS is like that for an industry. So it talks about the inputs, the exports out, talks about, customer concentration, talks about the sector in terms of, is it, populated by a couple large companies or like a million little companies, and it even for most of the sectors that I've looked at lately, it has like a COVID impact report too. So that's something that I'm happy to help you with. I think it's a very expensive service that we get for free for our customers. So definitely reach out if there's a sector you're trying to learn about. I love that tool. I also think for local businesses, I like to look at the demographic piece, which we also have. I don't know what ESRI stands for, but that's the database that we use. So I type in an address and it'll give me all of the demographics in the like 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile radius around there, from the population. Is it increasing, decreasing? Is it aging or de-aging? Average, per capita income, what's the trend line there? And for any type of consumer business, if you're looking to put together a business plan to get funding, the banks love this. This and a nice solid map showing your competition nearby is going to be super helpful.
Thank you. Looks like we have only 2 more questions remaining. One is, do you work with teachers who are tutoring online or in person, or don't have have an undefined COVID audience at the moment?
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. I actually have a client that is 2 high school students who started a COVID tutoring business. So yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
And the final question of the night, which is about you. Someone wants to know, have you ever started your own small business?
No. Although, I do get tempted, but I think that it's an important thing to know about yourself. I'm not proud to admit this, but like, I was a Girl Scout who's afraid to sell cookies. So I am not a natural entrepreneur. I will tell you though, I am excellent with a plan, and I can model the heck out of any business that comes up. So I always viewed myself as like a solid number 2. I, for most of my career, have worked as a banker or an advisor, and I'm super comfortable in that role. And I did have a 2-year stint where I ran a food service operation where I had like 200 employees, and it was an awesome experience, but it was not where I'm naturally most comfortable. So I love supporting entrepreneurs, which is why this is a good job for me.
That's awesome. You have to know yourself, right? Well, Christine, thank you so much.
I see some questions about sharing, but if you can sign up that says you were part of this, then I can share out from there.
Great. And this presentation was recorded too, so we can share that out as well from the library's YouTube. I'm going to put a link to our next talk in the chat right now. If you haven't signed up, Christine keeps kind of hinting at next week's presentation, which is going to be on the art of pivoting. And I hope everyone enjoyed tonight. Christine, thank you so much for that excellent presentation and for taking all those questions. And we hope to see everyone back next week.